It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hello and welcome to the Forum. I'm Mike Kerner, this week in for Gary Shorman. And our guest this week is Lynn Fenwick. And Lynn has so many cool items that you've been collecting that are down at the museum right now at Fort Hays, Forsyth Library.
Yes.
So I've heard the collection's really cool. We're going to talk about that collection in the second half of our show here today. But what I wanted to do is get with you a little bit and find out about your collection and how'd you get into this. And you are an alum of Fort Hays State University, you and your husband.
Yes.
So did you guys meet here at Fort Hays State University, you and your husband?
No, we were high school sweethearts.
Okay.
And we were married all the way through college.
So where did you all go to high school?
Maxville.
Maxville. And so you decided to come to Hays, Fort Hays State University, to be students here. And what were you and your husband studying here at Fort Hays State?
My husband has always been interested in business. I started out as an art major and then decided I needed to get practical. And I was a teacher, graduated with an elementary education degree, taught high school English in the East, New York State and Massachusetts. And then when we moved to Texas after he was out of the Air Force, I went to law school, Baylor Law School.
Wow, so you've been around a little bit
Yes,
and
we
had a
have.
chance to see the world, see the globe, I guess. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this collection. I think we'll get more into detail of it the next part of this show. But tell us about, how did you get into the Wizard of Oz? How did you, I guess, pick up that fascination?
The interesting thing about the Wizard of Oz is that people out of state are the ones who appreciate it and relate it to Kansas. So we had to move away from Kansas to realize what a wonderful heritage that is. That's just a part of the state. So when we lived in the East, New York and Massachusetts, and then we lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and Charlotte, North Carolina, all these were moves with my husband's career. People would ask us about, have we seen a tornado or been in a tornado?
Because you're from Kansas.
Because we're from Kansas. Or they would say, did you know Dorothy? And that's what got us interested, and we thought we better be better informed so we can answer those questions.
Well, yeah, and you, of course, being English and being a lawyer, yeah, you're into that. So you'll study it really hard.
I love books.
So you're really into reading, you're into writing, and you've written some stories too, haven't you?
I've written 2 nonfiction books related to the law.
Okay, and then you also are into writing, not writing, but artistry too, doing some I guess, sketching.
Yes, I enjoy drawing.
Well, you know, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make this first part of the show really short. I just wanted everybody to get introduced to you and your husband, and he's going to help us out a little bit on the side too here in the second half of the show. But really what I want to do in this show is I want to talk about your collection at Forsyth Library. It is a Wizard of Oz collection, and it's on display, I guess, until March 16th. So Friday, March 16th. And real quick, before we get into it, how did that come about to get your display at Forsyth Library?
We support Fort Hays State, and we learned that the show, the recent performance, was coming, and we started talking about our collection, and the library invited us to bring things to show, and we thought that was fun.
So here you are.
Here
so
we
that's what
are.
we're going to do in the second half of the show, talk about your collection, which is a pretty fascinating collection. We'll get into that here in just a few minutes. In the second half of the show, again, this is a forum. It's brought to you by Hays Med. I'm Mike Kerner in for Gary Shorman this week. Thanks for joining us.
Hays Med is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, Hays Med is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. Hays Med, helping people be healthy.
Eagle Communications is your ultimate business partner. We provide business class phone with customizable features and fast, reliable internet. Your knowledgeable team at Technology Solutions has a broad base of IT services to meet your needs. Let the experts at Marketing Solutions get your message to the right people on the best platforms. The only piece missing is your business. Call Eagle Communications today at 877-61-EAGLE.
Welcome back to the Forum. I'm Mike Kerner in for Gary Shorman. The Forum brought to you by Hayes Med. Our guest this week is Lynn Fenwick. And Lynn, thanks for coming by today. I see you've got a guest with you that you've had on the whole show so far today. Tell us a little bit about your guest today. What's this all about?
This is the Scarecrow. He's one of the four main characters in The Wizard of Oz. I'm a stickler for adhering to what L. Frank Baum wrote. And so I made this doll. I made the four dolls of the main characters. And he's my favorite. He's dressed like he's supposed to be from Baum's perspective. And Baum would have had him in blue. Now, Baum wrote the book. He didn't illustrate it. But Dorothy landed in the land of the Munchkins. And the Munchkin men wore blue. Everybody wore blue, their houses were blue, and a scarecrow is obviously going to be dressed in cast-off clothing, and so he's dressed in blue. His head was a cloth sack, and since it was Kansas, I painted the flower, our famous Kansas flower, on the back of his head, the Hudson cream flower, and the little Munchkins had these pointed hats and the boots with the blue on the top. So he is supposed to be authentic to the book rather than necessarily to the movie.
Now, you being a writer and then you also are an artist and lawyer, you really go for the artist, the person that wrote the book,
yes.
And not necessarily the screenplay. So you try to stay authentic to the book. Is there a lot of stuff out there that's in the movie that you look at the book and you go, that shouldn't be there? And one of them you told me in particular was Dorothy's slippers.
That's right. The author, The Sound of Silver Slippers, that's what Baum wrote. But in the movie, the story goes that the movie wanted to have something that really popped on the screen, so they're ruby slippers. And most people think of the ruby slippers. The thing that bothers me the most, at the time that the movie was made, they were apparently concerned that it would be frightening to children if the Land of Oz was real and Dorothy had really gone away in a tornado to the Land of Oz. And so they made the ending scene, if you remember, Dorothy's in bed and everybody's gathered around her. And it could be interpreted that it was a dream or that she'd hit her head during the tornado. And I think Baum would have wanted children's imaginations to not have that little confusion, to think that maybe Oz really is a real place and Dorothy went there.
So what year did he write the book?
The book came out in 1900 and the movie was made in 1939.
So it took a few years.
Yes.
And then the movie, we all know about the movie and the flying monkeys and all of that stuff too.
It's interesting, we've had friends as adults who still remember how frightened they were of the flying monkeys.
Oh yeah, I was one of them. I wouldn't watch it when I was a kid because of the flying monkeys. But you have a lot of items on display at the Sternberg Museum. Let's talk about them a little bit. We've already talked about one item here, and I think that there is a lot more than just one item there. How many items do you have on display at the Forsyth Library?
I don't think we counted them. We have music boxes, and I think there are probably 8 of those. One of the really nice things that is unique, there was a wheat weaver who has since passed away, and she created characters out of Kansas wheat straw, and the 4 main characters, and that's a very unique thing. We have a Christmas tree with all of the Oz ornaments on it. We have Jack-in-the-Boxes, and that appeals to a lot of people because they haven't seen that before. We have a limited edition print by Scott Gustafson, whom I think is one of the best children's book illustrators. I made a chess set authentic to the characters. So there is a Wizard of Oz chess set, and then there are some other prints and illustrations.
What would you consider the most rare item that you have in the display? Is there some item you think is really rare?
Nobody else has these dolls.
Okay.
But I think the straw figures are particularly unique because they are made from Kansas straw.
Okay. Interesting stories about your display so far. Any interesting stories maybe you've heard, not just about the display, but maybe somebody has talked to you about in your travels when you tell them you've got a Wizard of Oz display?
There was an elderly lady who came up after our presentation last week, and she described being ill as a child and having to be housebound. And people gave her the Wizard of Oz books. And so a lot of people think they only know about the Wizard of Oz, which was the first book. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was the first book. But he wrote 14 Oz books, and after his death, a lady began to write them, and she wrote 20, and then there have been books written even since then. So I compared it. I spoke to a group of 5th graders last week, and I compared it to the Harry Potter series, that in the early 1900s the kids were as excited waiting for the next Bond book as kids were 10 years or so ago when the Harry Potter books were coming out every year or two.
Wow. I'm going to have your husband hand over another item. You guys can swap this out. You stay seated here. He's got another item here. This would be our Tin Man. So let's look at our Tin Man here real quick and find out about this. So what's the story behind the Tin Man here?
Well, he's one of the 4 that I made, and when I went shopping for the Tin Man, obviously I went to a fabric store to buy the fabric to make him, but then I went to a hardware store. And the other things that I picked out for him, for his arms to swing and so forth, the man at the hardware store kept asking me if he could help me. And I said no, because you wouldn't believe what I'm looking for. So the Tin Man was a woodsman in the story, and a witch enchanted his axe, and he kept losing body parts until eventually he was all made of tin. And so I think he's kind of fun. And this is my husband's favorite of the dolls I made.
So you made a lot of the dolls that are on
4.
display. 4, okay,
4.
just the 4. All right, talk about, I want to go to the pop-up book next since we've
Okay.
got that over here, because that is actually, this pop-up book is actually from Forsyth Library itself. So they've got this on display with yours, but you could pop it up. I guess we can see the Emerald City too in here, but that is just, that's pretty nice there, seeing the Emerald City. So they have pop-up books, and these are from the Forsyth Library down at Fort Hays State University campus.
There is a display at the library, and it contains books from their collection, and this is one of the books. The particular pop-up artist that created these books is Robert Sabuda, and he's probably the best. His pop-up books are more complex and amazing than probably anyone else that's making them right now.
Okay, well, we're going to take you back a little bit. We're going to swap out with the other item over here. Take you back a little bit. This is something, I guess you learned this in art school, how to do drawings, right? So this takes you back a year or two. And where did you pick this? Did you draw this from a picture, or did you have him sitting there with you?
Yeah. Well, I would love to have had him come and pose, but since he died in 1919.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay, that's how long ago he died.
He did not get to come and sit for me.
And real quick, where was he from?
He was born in New York State, and then he came to the Dakotas at the time of the late 1880s, during the time of the populist movement, and he got there just in time for hard times. And so he wasn't doing very well, and he read about the Chicago World's Fair, and he decided that would be a good place to make a living. And so he moved to Chicago, and that's where he was living when in 1900, when the first book came out. He later went to California, so he lived.
And what inspired him to do these Oz books? Do you know? Have you read about that?
Yes. He wasn't successful at a lot of things. He was born into a wealthy family, but his own business ventures, a lot of them did not succeed. And so he finally, if you look at his life, you can see, he sold china, for example, and there is a chapter in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz about the land where all the people are made out of china. And so you can kind of trace these experiences that he had. But he had 4 sons, and his mother-in-law overheard him telling stories to his 4 sons, and she said, you know, Frank, you need to write those down. They're good. And so she did not like him as a choice for her daughter, but as it turned out, the lady who didn't like him is the one who learned to like him and encouraged him to write. So she gets credit for that.
So you were inspired to do this drawing?
Yes, and obviously I had to work from photographs, but and I traced, I found an example of his signature, so I traced his signature.
Very good. Well, great job you did.
Thank you.
So again, the display is on until March 16th at the main floor library at Forsyth Library, Fort Hays State University campus, and you're welcome to go during their hours. I want to thank you for coming in today and visiting with us. Again, that's Lynn Fenwick, and Larry and Lynn Fenwick's display of the Wizard of Oz memorabilia is on display right now at the library down on Fort Hays State University campus, Forsyth. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is The Forum. I want to thank Lynn for being my guest today. I'm Mike Kerner in for Gary Shorman on The Forum, brought to you by Hays Med.
Are you frustrated with Wi-Fi dead zones in your home? It happens when you don't have Boost, the cutting-edge Wi-Fi solution from Eagle Communications. A Boost-certified Eagle technician maps your home, then installs a dual-band modem and router, plus discrete access points to deliver wall-to-wall Wi-Fi with no dead zones. Boost powers all your family's devices in all the places you love to live. Get Boost. Wi-Fi made simple. Only from Eagle Communications. Call today.